Fire and Shadow. 1. A line they shouldn't cross. The Gryffindor common room was nearly empty. The fire in the hearth flickered lazily, casting warm golden light on the stone walls. Hermione Granger sat curled up in one of the oversized armchairs, a book resting on her lap. But for the past 20 minutes, she hadn't turned a single page. Because across the room, Ginny Weasley was staring at her. It wasn't unusual for them to spend time together. After all, they had been close friends for years. But recently, something had changed. Something neither of them dared to acknowledge. Hermione felt it in the way Ginny's fingers would brush against hers when handing over a quill. The way their hugs lingered just a second too long. The way Hermione's heart pounded whenever she caught Ginny looking at her like she was the only person in the world. And right now, under the dim glow of the firelight, that look was back. Couldn't sleep. Ginny's voice was soft, but there was something teasing in her tone as she moved closer. Hermione swallowed, closing her book. Too much on my mind. Ginny perched herself on the armrest of Hermione's chair, her knee barely brushing against Hermione's shoulder. Anything I can help with? Hermione hesitated. If she said yes, she wasn't sure if she meant the thoughts in her head, or the ones she was too afraid to say out loud. Instead, she forced a small smile. I don't think even you can solve this one. Ginny smirked. Try me. But Hermione didn't answer. Because the moment she turned her head, she realized just how close Ginny was now. Their faces were barely a breath apart. The warmth of the fire wasn't the only thing making Hermione's skin prickle with heat. Ginny, she started. But even she wasn't sure what she was about to say. Ginny's gaze dropped to Hermione's lips for just a fraction of a second before flicking back up to her eyes. The tension between them was electric, a silent challenge neither wanted to address first. And then, just as Hermione thought Ginny might actually kiss her, someone cleared their throat. They jerked apart. Dean Thomas stood in the doorway, raising an eyebrow. Am I interrupting something? Ginny was on her feet in an instant, her voice casual, too casual. Not at all. Just keeping Hermione company. Hermione forced a nod, ignoring the way her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her book. Yeah, just talking. Dean didn't look convinced, but after a moment, he shrugged and walked past them toward the dormitories. The second he was gone, Ginny turned back to Hermione, her smirk back in place, though there was something almost nervous in her expression now. Saved by Dean, she murmured. Hermione exhaled, her heart still racing. Yeah. Ginny hesitated. Then, with a soft laugh, she backed away. Good night, Granger. And with that, she disappeared up the staircase to the girls' dormitory, leaving Hermione sitting there, her mind spinning. 2. Fire and Control. For the next few days, Hermione did everything she could to pretend nothing had happened. She avoided Ginny whenever possible, threw herself into studying, and convinced herself that she had imagined the way Ginny had looked at her that night. It worked. Until the next Friday evening. The Gryffindor common room was filled with laughter and chatter as students gathered for a relaxed night by the fire. Ron and Harry were playing a round of wizard's chess, while Ginny lounged on the couch nearby, listening to Seamus tell a ridiculous story about a botched potion. Hermione sat across the room, pretending to read, when she suddenly felt Ginny's gaze burning into her. Slowly she glanced up. Ginny held her stare. Then, in a move so subtle no one else noticed, she tilted her head toward the door. A silent invitation. Hermione's breath caught. Number, absolutely not. And yet. A minute later, she was following Ginny out into the dimly lit corridors. The moment they were alone, Ginny turned, leaning casually against the stone wall, arms crossed. Avoiding me, Granger? Hermione folded her arms tightly across her chest. No. Ginny's lips quirked up. Liar. Hermione exhaled sharply. What do you want, Ginny? Ginny studied her for a long moment before taking a step closer. I think you already know. Hermione's back hit the cold stone wall, and suddenly, Ginny was right there. Close enough that Hermione could smell the faint hint of broom polish on her clothes. Close enough that she could see the freckles scattered across Ginny's nose. Close enough that if either of them moved just an inch... Hermione's resolve cracked. This is a bad idea. Ginny smirked. Probably. And then she kissed her. It wasn't hesitant. It wasn't careful. It was fire and challenge, bold and intoxicating. Hermione's hands fisted in the fabric of Ginny's robes before she could think better of it. Every ounce of self-control she prided herself on burned away the second Ginny deepened the kiss. But just as quickly as it started, Hermione pulled back. We can't, she whispered, her breathing unsteady. Ginny searched her face. Why not? Ron. Harry. Everyone, Hermione said, voice shaking. This would change everything. Ginny's expression flickered with something unreadable, but then she stepped back, nodding slowly. All right, Granger. Hermione exhaled, relieved, and maybe a little disappointed. Okay. But then, as she turned to leave, Ginny's voice stopped her. One last thing. Hermione looked back just as Ginny leaned in again, pressing a slow, deliberate kiss to her jaw. A promise. A challenge. Then, with a wink, Ginny disappeared into the shadows, leaving Hermione standing there, her heart pounding. And she knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The end? Would you want a part 2? Let me know. Hehehe.